Thank you very much. I guess probably a good place to start is very briefly a little bit about me, so you can place me. You mightn't think I've got a very strong Australian accent, but lots of British people certainly do. I studied my first degree, actually, we have two Sydney University people on the platform. I did agricultural science at Sydney University, and one of the things the British media has most liked about me is the fact that I'm probably the only British political leader who knows how to shear a sheep. Just a little bit of British political context. As our chair said, we have, I'm the leader of the Green Party of England and Wales. Our Scots went independent in 1990. In terms of the British political system, many of you may know this, but just a very brief rundown. We haven't got what I would say is the luxury of the Australian Greens of the proportional representation in the Senate. We have proportional representation elections in the European elections for the European Parliament, and we have them for the Scottish Assembly, the Scottish Parliament, the Welsh Assembly, and for the London Assembly. But basically, we're used to fighting first past the post. And many of you will probably know that we elected our first Green MP, Caroline Lucas, in 2010 in Brighton. Now, so I'm in the unusual situation, which I quite often have to explain to British journalists, that no, I'm not an MP, but I am the leader of the party. But that actually, I think, has lots of positives that we've come to discover as time's gone by, because it enables me to get around the country a great deal. I'm speaking to you today from Manchester, albeit an anti-fracking protest this morning at the Labour Party conference, and then joining the climate march here in Manchester. So to address the kind of topic we're talking about here, if the 1% rule is a Green government possible, I'm going to address this from the point of view of assuming that's Green Party. And actually one of the things that's very interesting, because we're going very strongly here in Britain at the moment, we've actually just seen our membership go over our all-time record, which is going back to 1990. We've reached 19,000 members, whereas about 10 years ago we had 5,000 members. And just this year we're up 30%. And people are actually starting to just occasionally ask this question of, is a Green government possible? And I think we have to say, yes, it certainly is, because that's what the world needs, really. And, you know, the message that we need to get across, and it's a very big one, but I think the public is increasingly ready for it, is the fact that the state of our economy, the state of our society, and the state of our environment are all profoundly unsustainable. Actually, the status quo isn't an option. And really, I believe, certainly in Britain, and I would say that I haven't lived in Australia for 20 years, so I'm going to avoid any real comment on Australian situations because, you know, I read the papers, but I don't know how things are there. But in Britain, we have a situation where if you ask people, are you confident that your children and grandchildren will have a better life than you've had? Increasingly, people are answering no to that question. And ordinary voters, when you talk to them, they kind of have a feeling like in the pit of their stomach that things have gone wrong, this system is broken. And we can put that into frames in terms of saying that, you know, neoliberalism, what I often talk about as Thatcherite ideology, the kind of debate that's dominated our politics for the past 35, 40 years, is very clearly broken. The idea that the rich can keep getting richer, the idea that in Britain we've got huge, I think you have in Australia too, huge privatisation, even though we all know that privatisation is a failed model. All of these things, it's very clear that they're broken, they don't have any answers anymore, as well as, of course, the whole environmental situation. And I talk in Britain about the fact that we use the resources of 3 planets, but we've only got 1 planet. But at the same time, last year, 1 million people depended on food banks to feed themselves, depended on charity. And we have 20% of workers, 1 in 5 workers, who earns less than a living wage. So I think we're actually in a situation now where most people, at some kind of level, however much gut feeling rather than thought out ideas, get that they need to change. And so that's why I talk a lot about real change. It's something of a mantra. But of course, we've got the 1% in the terms of this session. And this is a really interesting situation if you think about the Scottish referendum. And I'm sure most people probably have heard at least the sort of headlines of this. The campaign for yes, which the Scottish Greens were very much a very important part of. So they lost with 45% of the vote. But one of the really interesting things about that is actually 45% is a spectacularly good result. All of the largest political parties, pretty well all of the media, particularly the right-wing, tycoon-owned media, business, finance, big business, all of that was arrayed against the vote and was running enormous scare stories of, you won't get your pension paid. Stories like, the economy's going to fall apart, whole issue around the currency. And yet 45% of people voted against the establishment. And that's a really telling thing. And one of the really other exciting things was when I was up in Scotland, I went up a couple of weeks ago and spoke at a Green Yes meeting. One of the really exciting things was the fact that there was huge involvement, engagement on the streets. I spoke on a platform with women from Women for Independence. There were groups like Carers for Yes, all kind of different groups in society, many of whom traditionally don't really get involved in politics at all, were involved. And pretty well every bus stop, there'd be, with a few people gathered, there'd be a discussion about what's going to happen, why are you wearing that pin? And politics became something that you actually, it was an everyday, ordinary point of discussion. And I think, in terms of actually changing politics, getting to the point where the 99% can overcome the 1%, and that's the kind of situation where Green Government, I think, is make politics something that everybody does, not something that's done to them. And that means we really have to engage everybody in society, every civil society group, really get people engaged. And that's, not at all easy. Scotland was a very exceptional situation. But what we've certainly got in the UK is a situation where we have a whole big constitutional crisis now, in terms of our constitution is basically broken, the UK constitution is broken, and there's no obvious answers of how to fix it. And we're calling for a nationwide constitutional convention to actually draw up a new constitution. And that's one way I think that we can hope to really actually get everyone engaged in politics, because that really is the key to overcoming that force. The Scots didn't quite manage it, but they got 45%, which is pretty spectacular. And I think most people think that they will get independence eventually. So is the 1% rule, is a Green government possible? Probably no, but what we need to do is the 99% democracy. And that very much has to be an important part of the Green project. Thank you.